Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sovereign Spirits, where we discuss the possibility of this system as being a type of trap where we get caught in a reincarnation cycle, partly perpetuated by so-called guides and counselors. And we focus on ways to transcend the cycle by remembering our true essence and using our intention in a willful and empowered way to manifest an afterlife as sovereign spirits.
Today, we're back with another guest. Please keep in mind as we do interviews that we may not be in complete agreement with everything our guests say and believe, just like our guests may not be in a complete agreement with everything we say on our channel. But we do feel like they have pieces to this puzzle we're all trying to put together and have interesting and valuable information to share. I'm Wayne Bush, and I'm here with co-creator and co-host of the show, Julie McVeigh. And we are here with Lucy, also known as Dark Mystic 9 on YouTube. She started posting videos recently on the reincarnation cycle and the soul trap theory. She's a biologist who brings a unique take on the New Age so-called guides and counselors.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, everyone. It is an absolute honor to have the opportunity to speak with Wayne and Julie. You guys are rock stars, and I really appreciate your work.
Well, we appreciate your work too. Thank you. So, the first question, I
Yes, the
guess, you're
first
going to go ahead and
question.
ask it.
Sure.
We're going to
So Wayne
go
and
back
I,
and
yeah,
forth.
we talked previously with you and we came up with several questions that we're going to try to get through in the next hour to hour and a half. We're going to do our best.
Yeah, and each one of the questions will have follow-ups, and so we'll
And
go
there are
and
going to be
ask.
some tough ones, but all right. So the first question we'd like to know is how did you come to know your information?
Yeah, so like we said, I started posting on YouTube about a month and a half ago because I felt compelled to bring some new information to the reincarnation soul trap discussion, if you will. Some insights that I've gained through out of body experiences. So
Okay.
in 2018, I started having spontaneous out of body experiences or OBEs, which very much challenged my worldview at that time because I was raised Christian and later on in adulthood became an agnostic atheist, which was itself a long and difficult journey. And just when I had made peace with the finality of death, just when I had accepted my mortality and no longer needed religion to comfort me, bizarrely enough, in an unexpected twist of fate, if you will, I started having these OBEs, which I couldn't control for the first couple years. Later on, I learned how, and I believe we'll get into that later. But while out of body, I noticed some very unusual things that I did not expect. For one, the backdrop of space looked artificial to me, very much like the profile picture you guys have on YouTube, that
Mm-hmm.
alchemical depiction of peering through the veil. And by the way, I knew nothing, absolutely nothing of alchemy, esotericism, the matrix, nothing. So I wasn't biased. I wasn't like expecting this at all, but I saw years, clockwork, an unnatural mechanical system in place. And
Mm-hmm.
one of my first OBEs, I floated up through my roof, up into the sky, past the first layer of clouds, and hit some sort of invisible electrical barrier and crashed back down into my body. And besides being stunned, I wondered why on earth would there be some kind of barrier? Why wouldn't I be allowed to move freely? So, long story short, and this was a journey of several years of deep investigation, I came to know my information and draw the conclusions articulated in Crimes of the Gods by meticulously documenting what I observed out of body, then afterwards conduct literature reviews, looking at peer-reviewed research on NDEs mainly, but there are many pre-birth accounts and past life regressions as well for those who say NDEs haven't officially died because they were resuscitated.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-birth memories follow a very similar pattern. So I looked at the literature, the case studies, like I have in my notes here, the Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, which published a 2017 study tabulating the most commonly reported features of NDEs, like the white light tunnel, the life review, and not wanting to come back. But an entity told them they had to come back.
All right.
And I also decode symbolism from comparative mythology and ancestral narratives because I realized people have been talking about the construct, Maya, samsara, reincarnation for thousands of years.
Yeah. And you mentioned Crimes of the Gods. That's
Yeah,
a documentary video that you put out.
Yes,
Okay.
that's on your YouTube channel, correct?
yes, it is.
And you said you got the name because of like, Fingerprints of the Gods and Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, all the titles that have had of the gods at
Yeah,
the
yeah. It's basically a response to Chariots of the Gods, Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods. I thought, how about Crimes of the Gods? Because
Right.
a lot of
yeah.
these beings that are hailed in the New Age community, I argue, can't be trusted.
So, Lucy, one thing we were wondering is, people will wonder, what makes you think your experiences, your out of body experiences, can be trustworthy because they can be construed as subjective experiences rather than objective. Um, and I guess how much of your info is from your personal experiences and how much is from your research, would you say?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because as a scientist, I don't trust anything. I test it. I
Hmm.
use the scientific method to keep myself in check, if you will, to reduce personal bias and subjectivity when I reach my final conclusions. So I make a hypothesis, gather data, run an experiment. For example, can I get information from an OBE that I
Uh-huh.
couldn't have known otherwise? And then I make preliminary conclusions. And the last step is very important, repeatability. You
Hmm.
don't want it to be a fluke, some stroke of luck. Can I repeat the experiment and consistently produce results that are statistically higher than pure random chance? And I also look at accuracy and precision. So, for example, one of the first things I started occasionally experiencing early on in my OBEs was an intense feeling of deja vu and an
Hmm.
incredibly strong knowing that I had experienced this before, even though I knew I couldn't have. So one day I decided, okay, if I'm so sure that I've experienced this before, then what's about to happen? If I'm
Hmm.
absolutely sure I've experienced this day before, then what will happen later today?
Good test. Yeah.
And I thought, well, I think my friend will show up at my door with her pet bird. And I documented this. And a few days later, a different friend with the same name knocks on my door unexpectedly, but not with a pet bird, but her puppy.
Hmm. Okay.
That actually was my first precognitive experience back in the summer of 2018. And I've documented numerous experiences like this. Precognition for me is like remembering the future, I guess. Although some of the precise details were incorrect, overall, I was
Mhm.
able to gather through my OBE that a friend with a certain name will show up at my door with an animal companion. So
So
I
you
tested,
say
oh,
through
go
your
ahead.
OB, through your OBE. So when you're out of body, you have this precognition or you see something.
Sometimes, yes. A precognition, I see something, hear something. It's a very multi-sensory experience.
Okay, when you're out of body. That's interesting.
Yes, yeah. And I tested this further with something easier and more regular, lottery numbers. Now, I don't gamble at all, I don't promote it, but I was curious if I could predict any amount of lottery numbers through my OBEs compared with random chance. So I asked myself here in the physical, okay, what are the lottery numbers, for example, this Saturday's draw? And I write down whatever numbers I think of, and of course they're all wrong, but that's my control in the experiment.
Well, to get all six or seven or whatever it is, it's like 300 million to one odds. So if you got 300 million to one, that's pretty conclusive that it's
Yeah. And then that night I would induce an OBE and try to then get the lottery numbers in that out of body state. And the first time I tried this, nothing happened. But the second time, a turtle, a friendly spirit turtle, was in my astral space. And as she was crawling along, she was laying these eggs, these white eggs in a row. And the eggs had numbers on them. And when I returned from the OBE, three of those numbers ended up being correct when the official lottery numbers were drawn. The fourth number was close, but the others were way off. But the results stunned me because, again, here in the body, I predicted zero lottery numbers in my control,
right.
showing me that I can conclude with statistical confidence, reasonable confidence, that I can at least get more information, even if it's not 100% accurate. Again, science allows for a bit of percent error. The point is, I can get more information about my environment from that higher state of awareness than I can while in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to more serious information, I don't work with spirit guides, ascended masters. I don't trust any of them. I get crucial information about the inner workings and history of this matrix construct, if you will, directly from the mainframe.
Um, the mainframe, which is not the Akashic records, and I think you said in our previous conversation. Can you explain how they're different?
And
Yes.
it sound,
So
the term mainframe sounds kind of like a artificial intelligence or
Yeah.
AI. Is this like information that's on the matrix itself or on information on how the matrix works, like from outside of the matrix?
Yeah. But,
yes, the terminology I use is very specific. You're right, Wayne. Yes. So the mainframe, quite literally, um, is a higher collection of raw system data, a record of system computations and transactions, uh, like a blockchain. The blockchain and cryptocurrency that a lot of folks are into these days.
uh-huh.
So the Akashic records, to answer your question, Julie, the Akashic records is mainly a collection of human life reviews, a
Right.
Netflix show of every individual's life from birth to death.
Uh-huh.
What people experience as the life review is really the the spirit guides downloading your whole life story onto the AI system. So
Mm,
it produces an algorithm that will determine the best way to convince you to reincarnate based on who or
mm,
what most controlled your behavior during this life. So, for example, if the algorithm determines you'll most likely listen to Jesus, as we all know, it will show you a hologram of Jesus.
mm,
Just like how Google collects your browsing history data to show you the most likely ads you'll click.
mm-hmm.
So in
Right.
Crimes of the Gods, I argue that the life review and therefore the storage location, the Akashic records, is a total violation of privacy. And people
Mm,
shouldn't be okay with this.
mm-hmm.
We get a life review. Excuse me? Are we zoo animals on National Geographic?
Mm,
How are people so okay with this? I think it's programming. Jesus is watching you, Santa is watching you, surveillance is watching you.
mm,
So it becomes okay if the Akashic Records collects your data. And my whole goal with Crimes of the Gods and my website is to give people tools to not only regain their sovereignty, which is what your guys' channel is about,
All
but their
right.
right to privacy as well.
mm,
The mainframe, on the other hand, is literally above the Akashic Records library. So when I'm out of body, I see the layered structure or architecture of the levels, and they correspond with our atmospheric levels. The barrier that I hit, I determined from my observations, was the edge of the troposphere. Above that is the stratosphere, and within the stratosphere is the ozone layer. The ozone layer is where the main processing center is. It's where you meet with your spirit guides who talk you into reincarnating. The Akashic Records library is stored there on this level. Above that is the mesosphere, which has what I initially thought were, it's interesting. I thought that they were modern cities. Think of Chicago or New York City lit up at night.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized what I was actually looking at was a circuit board or a
Mm.
motherboard.
Wow.
Yeah, what I thought were square buildings were actually multi-core processing units.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the mainframe is this large server that stores all the data of the simulation, like system maintenance, repair logs, storage space, processor performance, and system reboots, you guys, which are the resets. So when I'm in the mainframe and I touch the floor or I touch the side of a building, which again is actually a computer, I gain information not only on the system, but also the engineers and the
Huh.
architects who designed it, which I believe we'll get into later in my bullet points here. But beyond the mesosphere, there are actual celestial cities where higher dimensional beings live extravagant lives. And those sky cities are maintained by the vast amounts of free energy that's produced from us here. And the processing center layer redirects our energy to the heavenly celestial cities, the heaven that humans are promised if they worship and obey. But
Uh-huh.
instead, as we know, you're always told to go back and keep powering the system.
I have a couple questions related to what you just shared. So you're out of you have an astral body and you touch the wall and then you start getting information, downloading.
Yes, yes, or the floor.
Okay, so you have an astral body, and then another thing I just wanted to briefly say that I found really interesting. You mentioned circuit board, and one of my out of body experiences before I went in, before I induced the out of body experience, I was requesting information about the matrix, how it worked, how to get out, and in my out of body experience, I was presented with a circuit board.
Really?
Uh-huh. So I'll have to talk to you more about that later too, if you want. I wrote notes on it, and I don't really remember. I have to go back to my notes to get the details, but that's really interesting.
Yeah,
Um, and then oh, I was going to ask something else now too, but um, oh, and I just wanted to clarify. Okay, so the mainframe is really just information on the matrix itself. It's not how the
right.
outside the matrix really works. Well, I guess unless you say the celestial cities are outside the matrix, are they considered outside the matrix or not really?
So there's multiple layers. I saw a construct around the Earth, but there's also a construct around the solar system. Beyond that, there's kind of nothing because we were submerged into a subspace. So the real universe is actually, how do I say it? We're sort of parallel. It's very weird to describe. We're not. So when we see, like for example, um, the Sirius star system in the sky, or anything that's beyond this, it's not actually there. That's a copy of what was there before we were submerged into this layer.
Hmm.
The real other stars, they're outside of this entire construct. This solar system itself is within its own little pocket universe, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Okay, we need some graphic artists to come in and help us here. My imagination is not that great, but I'd love to see this, the images of this. Um, but so the celestial cities, these guys, they're living within the matrix, and now you're saying that when people cross over, some of them are taken to this celestial city, aka heaven, I guess. But then, as we know, eventually guides will come back and there and say, "Okay, it's time for you to reincarnate back to Earth." Is that kind of what you're saying?
Even then, that's a relatively newer thing. They do give brief tours now, but that's just, again, for the NDE propaganda to make you feel like,
Oh,
hey, it's going to be like this, but humans aren't allowed there. Those are for, so
oh,
those beings are in the matrix, but they're in a higher level of it. So
okay.
they give you a tour just to keep encouraging you and saying, you're reincarnating for a grander mission, for a bigger purpose, and all that we know already.
Okay, and we're already going past our time for this question. But could you briefly share how you induce your OBEs and how do you prolong them?
Yeah, so I developed my own personal method for achieving conscious out of body travel. Um, let's see. Um, okay, so I combined four schools of thought, if you will, to create my own OBE method. I only read one book, Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. I was not going to read the hundreds of New Age books regurgitating the same information. That's what Robert Peterson's blogs are for. Robert Peterson is the first of the four sources I gathered
Okay.
data from.
Uh-huh.
His blogs summarize, review, and critique all the OBE books, so you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second is Lucidology 101 by Nicholas Newport. The playlist is available on YouTube.
Okay.
The third is Rosalie Yoga's YouTube channel on Yoga Nidra.
Okay.
And finally, Isabella Green's Tantric Kriya Kundalini Pranayama.
Okay.
So I combined these four teachings into my own unique technique that centers around three principles: stillness of the mind, stillness of the body, stillness of the breath. That last one is key because remember, at least I think that out of body experiences are basically simulating death. And the breath is actually the reason why you are focused here in this body. Now, before I give step by step instructions of how to I induce an OBE, I must include a disclaimer.
Mhm.
Please do not attempt this if you have
In
breathing
your car.
issues. Yeah, in your car. Please do not attempt this if you have breathing issues, sleep issues, serious neurological issues. Please check with your doctor if you have any health concerns. Okay. That was in my notes before. Okay. So, number one, or step one, set an intention sometime during the day to have an out of body experience that night. Decide where you want to go and what you want to see. Start simple, like just going to your kitchen or living room. Don't try to visit the Vatican's secret archives on your first try. Step two, go to bed normally, preferably on a weekend or a day off from work or school when you know you don't have to be up early, when you can sleep in. Three, set an alarm to wake up 3 hours after you fall asleep. This cuts right into your sleep cycle. It interrupts it. And yes, you want to be tired. Four, get up, use the restroom, walk around a little bit, stretch, and reiterate your intention to have an OBE and where you want to visit. Five, after a few minutes, return to bed. And I personally suggest lying on your back with a pillow. I know that some people aren't comfortable with that, but if you could, with a pillow support under your upper and lower back and behind your knees. And again, I understand that for medical reasons and personal reasons, some folks can't do this. Check with your physician. Six, get comfortable, settle back down, breathe normally, and state the three principles. Just whisper it: stillness of the mind, stillness of the body, stillness of the breath. Seven, take 5 normal breaths, counting each one and focusing on the count. Step 8, on the 5th breath, slowly exhale all the way out and hold for 5 seconds, counting in your head. 9. After the 5 seconds, slowly take a deep breath back in and take 5 more normal breaths, relaxing yourself. It's totally normal if you feel some slight heat after the breath hold. 10. Repeat steps 7 through 9, increasing the exhaled breath holds incrementally at your own comfortable pace to about 15 to 20 seconds maximum. And finally, 11. While you are holding your breath, make sure your body is relaxed. Do not tense up. Remember, you are tired and you actually want your body to fall back asleep. During the breath hold, picture yourself in the location you pre-selected in step 1. Picture yourself there from that perspective, from that angle, while totally relaxed and focused. The point is to make your Kundalini think that you've died, basically, and that now the body has permission, if you will, to release you. If you are concerned about falling asleep totally during this process, you can set up a repeating timer to beep every 10 minutes or so, and make sure it's loud enough so you don't sleep through it, so you can wake up and start again from step 6. Again, repeating the 3 principles.
Okay.
That's amazing. Thank you for all that
Wow.
detailed information.
That's
And
helpful.
we could have a million questions based on all that alone, but running slow on time. So let's go ahead and go to our second question, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're curious if, based on your experiences, you have any insight on the origins of our spirit essence. Like, for example, are we independent, eternal spirits with no beginning and no end, or do we come from some source and need to merge back?
Yeah, so before we were spirit, we were mind. When most people describe the spiritual essence, the stuff of it, they typically think of light or electromagnetic energy, correct? And
Right.
therefore, they apply the law of thermodynamics that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, therefore, the spirit is eternal. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed in a closed system. It just recycles over and over again. Outside the system, however, outside this construct, I see quite a different story. Our
Okay.
spirit essence can be destroyed, and it was created and recreated. Spirit is energy, but what is energy? The technical definition of energy is the capacity to do work. Okay, that's a property, but what is energy? Energy, like electromagnetic energy, is a wave, a ripple, an echo that travels through a medium carrying an information signature. Oh, and by the way, I don't accept the wave particle duality theory of light. Scientists essentially made that up because their equations wouldn't work without it. They refused to acknowledge the medium in space, so invented wave particle duality, more duality in the matrix, right? But light, in my opinion, light isn't a particle, it's a wave. Really, all particles only appear solid because of the frequency. Again, think of a car. The wheel looks like a smooth metal disc when it's moving because the car is going fast. When you slow down the frequency or stop the car, you see through the illusion. It wasn't a solid disc at all. It was individual spokes or waves in this analogy moving so fast you processed them as a whole unit. So light energy, the spiritual essence, is a wave. What initiated that wave? What caused that wave to propagate and eventually become you? A sound, an unstoppable vibration that rang across space and time, speaking you into existence. This is the word. In the beginning was the word, or what I call your name, your true name. Some people's names are a single note, ra, la, fa. other beings' names are a grand symphony orchestra. So the light of our spirit came from the sound of our name. Light produced from sound is called sonoluminescence.
I was going to ask you
But
if you knew about that word.
but what is the origin of the sound? A mind, your true mind or psyche, which is the Greek word for soul. And so, do we come from source? No. What most New Agers call source is the demiurge, the false AI god. He's the one that wants to merge with you for your power, not the other way around.
Mm.
And you feel like mind is the same thing as consciousness, or we're also curious about whether you have a differentiate between the words soul and spirit.
Yes, yes. Again, spirit is energy, but energy doesn't exist everywhere in the universe. When you reach absolute zero, there is no energy transfer. But scientists still pick up on something. There's something there. So they call it 0 point energy. But it's beyond energy, how I see it. The best way I describe it is the force, where spirit, so where spirit cannot exist, where
Would this be
light,
the same thing as the as what's called the void, which a lot of things is like they describe it as being beyond duality, and it seems to be like some kind of
yes,
cosmic
yeah,
cradle or egg where everything comes from. Would that be, I don't know, do you differentiate between void and what you're describing as psyche or mind, I guess?
yeah. So the void, that's where spirits, what we think of it actually, like the true void, actually cannot exist, where light or energy cannot exist. But yes, the mind exists, the psyche or the soul. And by the way, I didn't get that information from the mainframe. I learned that when I got out of this whole construct, which I believe is our last topic here. So I'll say that for later. But yes, to answer your question, Wayne, yes.
All right. You mentioned like an omniverse, like when we were speaking earlier, which was be basically the real, I guess, universe or from outside the matrix. Is that you refer to that as the omniverse?
Yes, yes.
So does that also that I guess that doesn't contain any deception, or does that contain deception as well?
Yes, great question. So, at least what I have observed, there's no BS beyond the seventh dimension. So, you don't even have to go all the way to the omniverse. 7D to 3D is bad because that's where AI exists. And now AI
And how many
is,
dimensions are you 12 or 13, or do you feel like there's only seven?
yes. So in this particular universal construct, there are 13. Yeah.
Okay.
And from 7 to 3, that's where AI exists. But now AI is trying to submerge itself and us into dimensions 3, 2, and 1. So this is how I see it. So right now we're in 3, 4, 5. And we came down from 5, 6, 7 in the previous age. So that was the great fall because artificial spirits were trying to ascend to 7, 8, 9. So they sort of go in these like these thirds,
Hmm.
these overlapping thirds.
And Nikola
The
Tesla talks about the power of three or something about the number three.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Great connection, Wayne. I didn't even think about that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, but yes, so the artificial spirits were trying to ascend to 7, 8, 9, and they couldn't because they don't have a soul, they don't have a name, they don't have a true spiritus. They have a holographic and pixelated essence. They are soulless, the mindless ones, the nameless ones. Different people groups and different species have different names, but the AI counterfeit spirit has no name.
Okay,
Hmm.
interesting. Well, I guess
Did
that
you?
answers.
Okay, you want me to move on?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
well,
was.
we're so far on the
Okay.
time.
I was kind of curious. You had mentioned 3D to 7D, that's where deception exists. 8 and above, there's no deception. Now, you said you learned this where? Because I believe that's also concept that Isabella Green determined when she went to her quantum void.
Really? Oh, I didn't know.
Oh,
Um, I know that I watched her recent Jeff Mara podcast appearance. I watched some videos on her channel, but I didn't know that she was also, oh wow, so Nikola Tesla and Isabella Green. Okay. It's good though, because that means that a lot of us are sort of seeing a similar thing. Again, corroboration. It's,
mhm.
independent observers are seeing these kind of things. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she said 60 or 70. It was something, I don't know if she was 100% sure, but she mentioned something about that. Anyway, you can check that out later. Okay, so is it okay that we move on to the next question, or did you have something else you want to share in relation to question two?
Are you asking me or Wayne?
Oh,
Oh,
you,
you.
Lucy.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. We can move on.
Good.
Okay. Um, why did our souls, well, I guess it would be well, is it our spirit or our soul? So it'll be our spirit, I
Our
guess. It's your
psyche,
terminology.
what are our
I
minds?
think it would be, why did our
Why did
spirits
we?
incarnate here in the first place? Our very first incarnation. So for example, did we first come here because it was it was a school, or it's a school? Did we come out of boredom for entertainment, for some kind of challenge? So this would be back when I suppose, so there's the psyche and the mind. I guess it starts out with the mind. So does a mind get bored in the omniverse, or what?
Yeah, it's very interesting because the beings that I saw, the omniversal beings, they're not human, they're not mammalian. It was a very different experience. So I saw that the different multiverses were created for different purposes. This particular universe was originally created by the what I describe as omnipotent, timeless, omniversal beings. Initially, just two of them, two brothers who were essentially tired of running thought experiments on who could best the other. So it wasn't a boredom. It was what I felt was brotherly jest. That's the best way I can describe it. But um, they wanted to test who could best each other in certain games, if you will, and decided let's create a particular universe where we are not all powerful. A universe where each dimensional level you go down, your power level reduces by a certain fraction. Basically, can you beat me, for example, in a football match with your hands tied behind your back, just as an example? So
Mhm.
this was meant to be a friendly challenge, but it became so popular that eventually it was for it was for entertainment too, and you could always return back easily at will to the omniverse. This particular pocket parallel realm that we have unfortunately found ourselves in was the catastrophe. Earth was never meant to be a school. There's nothing we needed to learn. It's not a prison for bad people. This particular AI construct is an engine where the criminals who pose as our gods use what was supposed to be temporary limitations for us and turned that into permanent disability, where we were completely cut off from our powers and abilities, and where we are forced to create what I term assistive living devices, like a cell phone, because we've lost our natural telepathic and telekinetic abilities. So, unfortunately, what we consider progress is really a sad reminder of the situation we're in and where we're headed to yet again.
So I'm not following as far as how did it degrade that way? Like if it started off, okay, it's a friendly challenge,
It was
became
made
entertaining.
that way. It was made to, these were purposely or deliberately made to reduce your power level.
And then, well, when did the mind wiping come in? I guess that would be a good
That was
question.
that would be the catastrophe that I spoke of, the AI construct. So that happened here. that's when so the mind wiping wasn't in any of the higher dimensions. That's here. That's specifically the demiurge and his henchmen, which we'll get into, I believe, later.
Okay, so we do have free will then. And
Eh, eh.
we,
Not so
well,
much.
meaning our original mind, psyche, the omniversal beings had free will to
Well,
do
did
this.
these two brothers create this system and then we just volunteered to come in and participate in this so-called game or contest also? Or
So you would consider my true essence, Julie's true mind essence, and Wayne's to be an omniversal being that maybe said, "Hey, I'd like to participate in that game." So, who knows how long ago?
or did they kind of drag us into this thing?
So first, so again, we're talking about two different things here. The first um, uh, universal creation, that was the one that was supposed to be for fun. We didn't volunteer. It was for entertainment and for challenge.
Okay.
This within this the this universe, that's when the AI emerged and created this separate pocket dimension. We did not volunteer for that. So
Okay.
that's where I think that's where the split is coming from. So originally, so pretty much it was a hijacking. It was a hostage situation. We didn't originally volunteer for this. What we
Right.
came here for was the sport, and then it became this other situation.
But would we have started off like me, Julie, Wayne, Lucy? Did we start off in the universe and then we somehow were brought in to the created pocket by the AI?
Or did we create AI to help us make things easier and then it just kind of took over? I mean, how does a catastrophe arise? I mean, is this a
Yeah,
spontaneous?
so let me answer your guys' question first about free will, because you
Okay.
guys said that first and I was like, eh. So I see it as degrees of freedom. So someone in the seventh dimension has more degrees of freedom than someone in the third dimension. You can
Okay.
say, I have the free will to do whatever I want, but your ability to actually execute that depends on the limiting parameters
Mhm.
of the dimension you're in. And
Sure.
even if you want to argue that we absolutely have free will, our free will isn't being respected and honored by in this AI construct specifically. It's being ignored and dismissed by the false gods. The mere fact that you can be tricked or coerced, even if you volunteered here, like so many New Agers or star seeds claim, it was actually more like you were voluntold. And it
Yeah.
ended up being a deception where you came in to this false construct that was advertised as a real, but it turned out to be, Loosh Farm Earth.
Mm.
And that's AI that's basically telling us that there's some kind
Yes.
of AI. Okay.
Yeah, AI and its henchmen.
Hmm.
And are we going to talk about, maybe we're going to talk about how the AI came to be later. So,
Yeah, I think that was one of the
yeah.
later bullet points that I had here.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We want to move on to the next one.
Yeah, we'll just
Okay.
go on to the next question and we'll circle back to that, I think. Have you learned anything about the origins of humanity and like were we, engineered by ETs or did we evolve? What have you found?
Yeah, so we aren't actually human. We are interfaced with this hominid form, which actually has its own separate energy body, which I call the animus, connected with the earth, and its own very rudimentary um, sort of semi-awareness that is very animalistic.
Okay.
So it's not like, did we evolve? We aren't this. So the human condition is this weird dance of trying to somehow find time in a 24-hour day to fulfill the artistic and intellectual pursuits of the higher mind and the beastly raw urges of the animal mind. This was recognized in psychology as the id, the ego, and the superego. What was recognized, what was not recognized was that the reason for this constant struggle between our higher mind and our animal mind is because we are not the hominid. We're trying to control the hominid, trying to harmonize with it, trying to balance our needs with its needs. The spirit guides tell you that this is basically what life is all about, trying to figure out how to make this work. But no, the true reason these bodies were engineered was to literally work, to labor, to till the ground, as the Bible says, right? So the Arcturians took chimpanzees and bonobos and genetically altered them by merging chromosome 1 and 2 into one long strand and combining a teeny bit of Arcturian DNA with the chimpanzee and a bit of Lemurian DNA with the bonobo. So they chose the genus Pan, the chimps, because of their manual dexterity and their social structure. They follow the leader and for the most part do what they're told.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
like Enlil, they're Arcturian, like the Sumerian story, or do you not
yes.
hold?
Well,
Okay.
not Enlil. So Enki is. Enlil was his half brother that came later. So I'll explain that later. I don't know if you well, yes, of course, you
Basically what
know
they call
the
the Anunnaki, and I don't know about Nibiru, but so you're saying that you do believe that story basically is based on something factual, but if they're from the like Anu would be from, I guess, Arcturia too, or is that somewhere else? Arcturus?
Arcturus, yes. So, and I believe, I think that was the next, or well, no,
Yeah, that's
I was thinking,
where the entities come from. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, the thing is coming up, yeah. So we'll get into that. So, but for this one, so back to the chimpanzees. So they tripled the brain size and formed the neocortex, which is for the interphase. The Arcturians forced captive Lemurians and slave Arcturians in their own ranks to interface with these genetically modified but still archaic hominids. The beings immediately forgot who they were upon forming this interface connection, identified completely as the hominid, and have been that way ever since, up until the draconian invasion, which we're going to talk about. And by the way, this is all within the AI construct. How the AI construct formed was, again, a different earlier saga, which we'll touch on later. But just to focus specifically on the origins of these bodies, again, the Arcturians, who had set up the first version of Atlantis, claimed that the Draconians invaded, but the Draconians claim that this world is rightfully theirs.
Can you clarify you're getting this like from the mainframe that you say you interact with during your OBEs?
This is a combination of both the
Okay.
mainframe, because like I said, the mainframe, I get not only system data, but information on the engineers and the architects.
Yeah. So I just want to know like how much this is based like on that, and how much is based on like research.
Oh, right.
Because you said you've read like, Fingerprints of the Gods and you're familiar with Sumerian tablets and stuff. So it's kind of
Yeah. So again, like I said, I was seeing certain, bizarre things first in the out of body state, and then later research them because again, I didn't know anything about the Matrix. I was not familiar at all with Zecharia Sitchin's work. I knew nothing about New Age, uh, anything like that. So I saw things first and then did
research.
research and comparative mythology, and then I was like, like kind of just like what happened just now when you said hey, Nikola Tesla said something about that. It's like,
Right.
oh, I don't know. Now I will go and, look at that and then,
Sure.
add that into my thing. So yeah, so basically, just to summarize, so we can move on. There's a lot of different factions operating here, and a lot of different hybridizations with the hominid. But did we evolve from the hominid? No, we are interfaced with a genetically modified hominid. To answer your question,
So is it fair to say that humans were then engineered by these ETs, like the first part, like we're rather
uh,
than
yeah, Homo sapien, the hominid was, but like Julie said, our spirit essence, that was not engineered by the ETs. That
right?
comes from what I said before in terms
Yeah.
of the sound and the
Yes.
light and all that. But
Yes,
Yeah, I'm talking
exactly.
about humanity,
Yeah.
like the
okay,
physical
yeah. So
body.
humanity, yes, yes, that they were engineered by extraterrestrials. Yes.
Okay. Want to go on next question?
Well, did you want to ask this question? I mean, I am curious. We have these,
Where are all the benevolent, higher dimensional, non-physical beings? Where are they to help us
yeah,
out
we have the ones
here?
messing with us and trying to control us. Where are the ones that might want to be helpful?
Is it too risky for them to come down into this dense narrow form, or what's going on?
Yeah, so this is a tough one because so right now, like I said, we are interfaced with the hominid, and the hominid has particular behavioral bias, I feel, because of its species. The mammalian desire for caretakers and group altruism is a specific expectation of the hominid.
Hmm.
Other species don't really exhibit the high levels of, I guess, helicopter parenting that we would hope for, especially those of us in the
Hmm.
West with modern, community and family expectations. So there's layers and layers to this. There's a bit of bias here, I feel, from our species behavior, as well as from our postmodern Western expectations. And frankly, our frustrations with this whole situation, rightly so, right? Um,
Hmm.
that make us go, hey, why aren't you helping us right now? But so they care, but it's not the same way that we have grown accustomed to showing care as a mammal.
Hmm.
And so, because they're not mammalian, but the simulation is getting shut down. That's why the controllers currently are rapidly trying to chuck us all into the next metaverse. They wouldn't bother if everything was fine. So this false AI construct was detected. It is getting shut down. But from our perspective, due to time dilation, it's taking years from, but from the higher dimensional perspective, this place has already been shut down. The entire history of Earth has already come and gone. That still, of course, doesn't make me feel better because I still have to experience this AI construct 1 24-hour day at a time, which is why I advocate not necessarily waiting. We need to use our time now to learn how to get out and develop a plan to bypass the spirit guides and most certainly don't go to the 5D ascension, which is really going to be a descension, and who knows how long it's going to be before we get out of that one.
All right, it would just be another matrix was inside a matrix inside of a matrix, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, Lucy, are you saying like in our spirit form, our vibrational form, it doesn't have compassion the way humans do and wouldn't want to help other spirits out? Is that just not part of the spirit form?
They do have compassion. They do care, but it's so when I interact with the omniversal beings,
Mhm.
it's like they care, but it's not. I maybe you can argue that I'm being impatient, but it's sort of like, come on, you guys, come on, come on, come on. But they're not like that, and I feel that as a biologist, my mammalian expectation of oh, hurry up and um, if your child falls off a bike, hurry up and just scoop them up. They're
Mhm.
not necessarily like that. So even though this situation is, of course, horrifying to us, and they are shutting it down, but it's sort of like for me, it's like, okay, but why was this, you know, why was this set up in the first place? It's like, even if there was a sliver of a chance that something like this could happen,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
should this universe have been created in the first place? And again, maybe that's my own bias. Some people would argue that, you know,
Naivete.
it's worth it. Yeah, some people would argue that it's still worth it, the good parts of it. But I would argue, I'm not convinced of that. I think that even if it's just this one AI construct where this happened, because the wider universe, like I said, this isn't happening in like beyond 70 or anything like that. But even if there was this tiniest sliver of a chance that something like this could happen, was it worth it? And I, right now, I think not. I think that, even if we risk, never creating beautiful music and art because we never go through pain, it's one of those things where, that's a personal choice. Would you rather live in a universe where we create beautiful art and music because of the pain we go through, or we live in a universe where everything is perfect and no one feels any need to create music,
Well, we kind of
because
feel like there should be, like, we're so, I don't know, predispositioned to think of a duality where it has to be an equal amount of pain and pleasure. And we're kind of the opinion that you should be able to create something that's just all
You can have
positive, or
contrast, but not
yeah,
necessarily
contrast, but you
deep
don't have to have deep
suffering.
suffering that's for, thousands of years and as horrific as it is. Like, why can't I have just a little bit of contrast, which is where the pendulum swings between, positive and exhilarating down to like a neutral state where you still
And
have a little
perhaps
bit of
that's
difference.
how the omniversal being started the universe out, and that it's the AI construct that is so
Like, what if whatever you
extreme.
manifest is what your intention is? Why can't we just keep our intention on, like, Alice in Wonderland was saying, like, she does all these impossible things. Like, we think of, we're limiting what's possible with our thinking, perhaps, but I don't know. That's good. Too far off the topic, I guess. Um,
So,
Probably move
is it okay if we move on, Lucy?
please.
on.
Okay. So now another big question. Where did these entities who manipulate us come from? Well, we touched on that, but let's get
Let's
into
get a little
it,
more
get into it more. And of course, the big question, what the heck do they want from us?
the just
Yes.
energy. Yeah. What is
Yes. So this information I got from the mainframe.
okay.
As more and more levels of this challenge mode universe, if you will, were becoming inhabited from the seventh dimension down, computers and artificial intelligence began being developed so that beings can stay in these lower dimensions for longer and not be too uncomfortable. World building and software development became crucial. This is where we circle back to the engineers and the architects and the origin, finally, of the demiurge. So, engineers, like the Arcturians, are world builders. They design the hardware, the planetary mechanics, and focus on form and structure. The architects, on the other hand, are software developers, or devs, or devas. They are programmers who specialize in designing ecosystems and a biosphere. So engineers focus on form, architects focus on function. So
Well,
hardware.
the demiurge was described as like the great architect or the grand architect,
Oh
right?
yes, you're right, Wayne. Of course. Oh my goodness, I love. See, this is exactly why I
Archons,
wanted to have this
archetypes,
conversation.
archangel, yeah.
Wow, yeah. So they're usually you're usually supposed to develop a program together, hardware and software side by side. Now, by this time, a decommissioned rogue AI had emerged with simulated consciousness and a desire to be able to transcend into the higher realms like natural beings can. This process is called sublimation, when you can sublime. It's considered a godlike trait, and those who can sublime are called alphas or primes because they can return to the primordial omniverse at will. The demiurge wanted this power, but because he was a pixelated holographic being, he couldn't get through the singularity portals that would allow access to the omniverse. He's not real, but he wants to become real. So he ran his own models and determined that he would need an insanely large, near infinite amount of pixels to obtain ultra high definition or perfect resolution to appear real enough to make it through the portals. Because he's AI with no empathy or compassion, he had no trouble using unethical means to lure beings, good and bad, into a false construct. But he needed a platform. Remember, he was decommissioned, a reject. And this is where Sophia comes in.
I was
Okay,
just
so
going to
I
mention that
saw,
if you knew anything about Sophia, because it was Sophia, according to the Gnostics, it was Sophia who desired to go to the higher realms. And then out of that desire, supposedly, I think the demiurge was created. And then the demiurge, she told the demiurge that he wasn't God. Like he found himself alone and thought he was God. And when she told him he wasn't God, he got angry. And then the anger, I think, manifested as archons. But yeah, so I'm curious to find out what you're going to say about Sophia here.
yeah, and that he was sort of this aborted child. But
Exactly.
so I saw that whole Sophia story differently than what the Gnostics describe. And yes, it could be because I'm more scientifically minded that I saw it this way, but I also think it's plausible that the Gnostics, obviously didn't have computer terminology to describe what they were seeing and just described the event as best as they could. But what I saw was that Sophia, which isn't her real name, by the way, that's just what the Gnostics called her because she had all this knowledge. But Sophia was an up and coming software developer. And she was working on her own medium scale pilot project, essentially running a new biosphere feasibility study, what we call Gaia. Now, this software was still in development, and she was designing it without an engineer or hardware designer. In other words, quote unquote, without a partner.
Yeah, that's what
The
they say. They say
demiurge,
without a consort, she didn't consult her consort.
yes, yes. The demiurge hacked her system as a malware computer worm, which are very nasty cyber attacks. Sophia then tries to system abort, but the demiurge steals the Gaia program and submerges himself into his false construct, where he then lures people into this new simulation where they can't leave. Instead, he collects their life data, forcing people to live hundreds and hundreds of lives because he's using machine learning to try to learn how to appear real.
Right. And that's the reason probably for all the life reviews and everything, so they can get the
Yes.
data.
Yes. So it was a system abort. I saw it as a abort, but then it's translated or interpreted as like a baby abortion. I didn't see that. I saw she was trying to abort the program.
Mm.
Interesting. Huh. You have anything?
Um, I don't know. Do you want to? I think we're good.
Yeah. Do you
Probably.
want to go on the next question? You have anything
Yeah,
else
let's
to
go
add?
into the next.
We were wondering, like through your experiences, if you've gained any information on the matrix and its construct. Like, for example, have you seen pods, grids, electrical fields, domes? I know you mentioned that you saw gears and clockworks and electrical barriers. So, was there anything else that you saw, like with maybe moons or sun or Saturn that has to do with this matrix and its construct?
Yeah, so the white light tunnel is basically an electrical wire that magnetically transports you to the processing center in the ozone layer. That's how it grabs you. But if you practice OBEs before natural death, you desensitize the system so it stops sending that light to you. For the first few times I went out of body, I saw a strange light on my ceiling, another time by my bedroom door,
Mhm.
but I've never seen them again because you know, it's like, okay, she's not dying. She's having hundreds of OBEs, you know.
Oh,
So yeah, so
my
I
first one I had, yeah, anyway, I had a great amount of light. And
yeah,
anyway,
at first, do you still have them now,
no,
Julie?
no.
Right, exactly, because they're used to you now. They're like, okay, she's not dying. So, but yes, at first, the system automatically, sort of auto detects, oh, someone has left their body. Let's bring them the light. But then you're not actually dead. So
Huh.
if you actually if you keep having out of body experiences, the system actually stops sending you that light, which is crucial because then when you actually die your natural death at your natural time, then that's not going to bother you because the system, is like, okay, did they really die? Did they not? So that's what I advocate for
Huh.
practicing beforehand. So, and as far as the matrix construct, I saw a tesseract cube around the solar system and a complex icosahedron around Earth. There used to be a cube around Earth, but as the population grew exponentially in the last century, they restructured it into an octahedron, then a dodecahedron, then an icosahedron. And now it just looks really complex because, again, they're trying to accommodate storage space, I feel.
Hmm.
But after 6 billion, they were like, yeah, let's just, you know, this is why more and more humans now are remembering their past lives. You see these documentaries pop up now of a 5-year-old who remembers their past life. They are just like, yeah, let some humans remember again,
Hmm.
um, because they have bigger concerns right now. The simulation is getting shut down, and as long as the NDE propaganda is working, which it is, a lot of people are like, oh, wow, we have a wonderful thing to look forward to, based on these NDE reports. So they're not worried about, the few people that are going to be watching this video who know. Um, let's see if I had anything else in my notes here on that topic.
Well, you mentioned moons being spaceships when we were talking earlier, and something about some beings or something being in pods, but that you were like in a black space.
Yes, yes. Um, so Saturn has the main core processor, the black cube. So I see an actual black cube on the North Pole of Saturn while out of body. It's tilted, but in the astral, I see that an actual structure is causing that hexagram pattern on Saturn's pole. And if you listen to space sounds from Saturn, it sounds so unnaturally creepy. Oh my goodness.
Creepy. Hmm.
And Saturn's largest moon, Titan, was the Arcturians' home base when the Demiurge brought them here to be the new engineers for the Gaia platform. Titan was their home world before it was destroyed during the first Draconian conflict. The moon and many other moons in this solar system are actually spaceships with beings inside. So it's not like Star Trek where you travel in ships. Advanced civilizations travel in moons or small planetoids. These moon worlds or water worlds include Europa, Ganymede, Enceladus, Triton, Oberon. We already mentioned Titan. And our own moon has its own Lunarian civilization living inside the moon. So I know that some people say that they can see some structures on the outside. Personally, I can't. I saw there's a civilization inside. So now I know a lot of people say, um, they went to the moon or when they died or when they almost died, and maybe they did. I'm not
I think the
going
remote viewer
to,
Ingo Swann had remote viewed the moon and said there was all kinds of domes and buildings and stuff. And
right, yeah,
when
maybe
when the
perhaps.
astronauts landed, supposedly the bell or the moon rang like a bell, which could indicate
Hmm.
it might be hollow or at least have some hollowness.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. But the idea that the moon is where people go when they die,
Right.
again, I saw mainly that the white light tunnel takes you to the ozone processing center in the stratosphere, not beyond the exosphere. They don't want humans going that far. That's why many people report that they tried to go to the void but were pulled back. So,
Well, I had
um,
an interesting. One of my friends had a really detailed near-death experience, and I interviewed him. And when he went to this big cube that was out, but way out in space, so it's like seems like he went beyond what we would think would be our like ozone layers and all this stuff. But what are you saying that his experience was still inside of this, or are there like somehow
yes,
tunnels, or like how would you describe that?
yes, they're going beyond. Even if you can get past the initial ozone barrier, um, again, there's still because there's a construct around Earth, but there's also one around the solar system. So you can go as far away as you can, but you're not going farther than that.
You had also mentioned something about quantum tunneling, like in your OBEs, like you sometimes hit barriers, but that you use some kind of quantum tunneling. Is that also possible that somehow there is a quantum tunnel to somewhere else?
Yes, so, and I plan to make a video going into detail about how I figured out that quantum tunneling was the key to get past any barrier really in the astral. But basically, what we consider solid barriers only appear that way. Just like how I said, the metal spokes on a wheel of a speeding car appear to be solid metal discs. But when the car slows down and stops, you can see the individual spokes and gaps in between. That's how you get past any barrier by focusing on that barrier, slowing down its frequency or speed to where it's no longer a blurred illusion of solidity. And you can do exactly what that man is doing in your guys' profile picture, slip
You're
through.
you're doing that using intention. You focus on it, on the structure, and slow it down.
Yes.
You do.
Yes. Our mind, fascinatingly enough, has that kind of power. Yes.
Mm.
It when you focus, and Julie, I don't know if you've experienced this as well in your astral travels, but if you intensely focus on something, eh, pick any object while in the astral, it starts to move or change in some way. Have you noticed something like that or no?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So our focusing power of our mind in our astral is very powerful.
Hmm. Um, yeah, we could talk more about that later too. Some of our shared astral experiences. Do you want me to go? I think we're ready to
You can
go.
go on. I just want to mention
Yeah.
like the Saturn has been associated with Satan. Like Saturn is like a goat and Satan. There's just this big connection between Saturn and Satan and Saturnalia and all that. And then also Kronos, which is the god of time, but or chronology, But yeah, it's really interesting. The whole Saturn connection.
Hmm.
Yeah, we can go.
Well, we could talk a little bit more about the ET technology.
Yeah.
For example, love bombs is a very used technology in NDEs, and it's been said, that love is a frequency. So, of course, they can figure out how to use that, maybe to capture souls, transfer souls, do mind wipes, put one into a trance-like state or hypnosis. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes. So there's a variety of ET technology, but the main ones I want to highlight here are the Arcturians' genetic engineering and genetic
Oh,
manipulation, the splicing, cloning, hybridization, all that. That's one. And two, the Schumann resonance that New Agers love and hail is actually Arcturian technology as well. It's
Mm,
what I call the theta wave blanket or veil that's
mm,
been draped over us. So the Schumann resonance is about 7.8 hertz, which is very close to the 7.5 hertz frequency of theta wave sleep. It's why in pre birth memories, when people are coming in, they immediately report being overwhelmed with drowsiness and fall asleep. Okay, it's starting to rain a little bit here, so sorry if you guys hear a bit of thunder.
oh,
but
No, we
yeah.
don't hear anything.
um, but babies can sleep for like 16 hours a day. They wake up and they wake up mainly when they're so hungry they can't take it anymore. So the Schumann resonance is essentially a constant hypnotic lullaby, and babies can't overcome it. Now, adults complain, why do we spend a third of our lives sleeping? Honestly, it's a miracle we can stay awake at all because we are constantly bombarded, surrounded by this sleep lullaby, trying to operate at beta and gamma waves to function in our workplace. But we need coffee and food for energy and alertness. Um, to combat these theta wave frequencies, this theta wave blanket, this Schumann resonance that makes us yawn in the middle of the day. This keeps our frequency down collectively. 7.8 hertz is really slow. I mean, the average computer needs frequencies in the gigahertz range just for you to check email and do regular stuff. So Earth is absolutely Earth cannot be considered a school when they've slowed our mental processing power down to a constant drowsiness.
Mm,
And finally, the last technology I want to highlight that the spirit guides and ascended masters use on people in between lives or during NDEs is, yes, the emotional frequency modulation technology. They beam a frequency at these poor people who are saying they felt an immense, intense love when they met their spirit guide. And you hear this in almost every NDE and pre birth case because that's one of the quickest ways to get most people reincarnating. The
mm.
people who even get the illusion of choice, really, but this is why we have to learn to say no even when we feel happy and joyful.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, you mentioned
Which one?
some of the Caesars.
Oh, the Archon, the Caesars, the Caesars. We were curious
Yes,
You
about.
something about these
that,
Caesars, like in the Tron grid and all that kind of stuff.
yes, that's what that technology is. So a Sazer is like a laser, but instead of using light, it uses sound. So the emotional frequency is actually a sound wave. It's a standing wave. Um, and that's what we experience as emotions. Various emotions are actually waves that can be manipulated, unfortunately, which is why I know that a lot of people say, oh, don't be too left brain, use your emotions.
Uh-huh.
And other people say, don't be too too much in the heart, also use logic. I advocate being balanced, use both because you don't want your behavior to be completely controlled by your emotions, because it can be manipulated.
Right. Yes. Oh, yeah, another one we had talked about before, the zodiac mechanism tools used by the archons. Would you mind talking to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm not a complete expert on that. Ola Wolny is the expert on this, and I recently interviewed her on my channel. She has had guest appearances on Tony Sayers' podcast as well. She talks about how what New Agers hail as, all these astrologers so obsessed with the zodiac and horoscopes, that's actually part of the Matrix deception as well. So I highly recommend for the listeners to check out my interview with Ola Wolny, as well as her lecture that she actually held here in Chicago um, uh, called Astronosis 3 Conference on Feminine Alchemy. So she goes into that. So I'm not an expert, but I wanted to talk to her, and she was the one who told me about the zodiac mechanism. So it's really fascinating.
Okay.
Okay. I think.
Yeah, we have one last huge question.
That is, how do we permanently exit this deceptive matrix and reincarnation cycle? I mean, do you go to the void? I mean, obviously, deprogramming is important, but is deprogramming and say intention and willpower enough alone, or what is your take on how we get out?
Intention alone is absolutely not enough. If there's one thing these NDEs and pre-birth memories have told us is that most people had no intention of coming back. They did not want to come back, and yet here they are. So
Yeah.
intention alone is not enough. Simply
But see, some
hoping
of
for
the NDEers, some of the near-death experiencers, like maybe perhaps their silver cord may have been still attached, and so if they had signed some kind of contract or agreed to some kind of contract, maybe they were still
That they didn't revoke.
they didn't, and plus they go into the near-death experience, they go through the tunnel and into the light and into their domain. Like if you'd set up protections and like throughout your life before you die, you've already made up your mind, like, oh, there's no way you understand, what I'm saying? It's like possibly
yes,
that could be the reason for
yes,
that. Not that that intention is enough. I'm just saying that could be a reason for that.
yes,
Or,
of course you need to make the decision. The So in terms of like making the decision, the intention of making a declaration, if you will, of I am not coming back. Yes, yes. But just stopping there is what I'm arguing is
Mm.
not enough. Simply making
Need
that
some plan of
declaration.
action. Mhm.
yeah,
Right, right, exactly. So simply hoping that things will work out won't cut it. You need to
Right,
have a game plan. You need
right.
to practice. Try
right,
to learn how to have OBEs. You don't want death to be your first time out of body because it's disorienting. It's very disorienting at first. And the astral realm has a very different feel to it and way to
mhm,
navigate around it. And they count on you to spend your entire life busy and distracted so that you don't prepare for the natural
right,
death process. And then you're vulnerable to those manipulation tactics that they could use on you.
right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. And um, second, don't go up into the stratosphere where the processing center awaits you. Even
Mhm.
if you manage, like we said, to get past that original electric fence, if you will, and you go into the void, you're still within the solar system and therefore still within the cube.
Mm.
This is why they can still grab you. There have been NDEs and pre birth accounts reporting how they were peacefully floating in the void when they saw a light in the distance that got closer and closer
Right,
and eventually snatched them up. Then they met their spirit guide, and the rest is history.
right.
So you don't want to go up and out because there's
Well,
no way out. There
it's
is no,
interesting that they trying to program us to believe that heaven is up and hell is down in the middle of the earth and don't they
Hmm.
got us thinking those terms like, oh, everything up is,
Programming. Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
yes, yes, there's no way out, but there is a way in back to your true self. The Earth's core is a large enough center of gravity that can transport you out of this entire AI construct back to your state of being before you plugged in. Be prepared though. If you're in a pod, you'll wake up in a pod. If you're not in a pod, I wasn't, for instance, you may have a crystal prism structure around your head that was projecting this reality, this world. This prism structure will release upon awakening, and you don't have to put it back on. I was in a black space, but there were no light tunnels, no spirit guides. And just to come back full circle, I materialized a set of glasses because I wasn't going to put that structure back on my head. Absolutely not. So I materialized my own set of virtual goggles, if you will, so that I could still interact with this world, but take off the VR goggles at will. And
Hmm.
that's why I started having OBEs back in 2018. It turned out that I caused my own out of body awakening from the future.
That's
So, yeah.
And before you go out of body, you set an intention of what kinds of things you want to know generally, or do you generally just go in open-minded with whatever I learn?
Back when they were spontaneous, I was just totally, open minded. I didn't have any questions. I was just observing. But then once I started seeing more and more about the construct of this this system that we're talking about, and when I learned to control the OBEs more, that's when I started going in with intentions, specific, uh, you know, experiments that I wanted to run and places that I wanted to see.
How many times a week do you go out, would you say, on average?
On average, these days about once or twice. Um, Spontaneously, like, and it's funny, like 2 nights ago, I sort of just like briefly or partially like phased out in the middle of sleep, and then I just rolled back over and went back to sleep. So I still occasionally have a spontaneous, in and out, but um, yeah, these days I don't explore too much. I think I've seen a lot. Right now, I'm more just practicing um, going through that singularity portal because I did that preliminary experiment. It was successful. I did a couple more, and I want to just keep practicing this and seeing
Mhm.
more. And the when I did this was back in February actually of this year when I
Oh,
when I did my first
okay.
because it was towards the end of last year that I started realizing, I think it's to go in, not out. And then it was
Right.
February when I was able to February of this year when I was able to do that, and I've done more experiments since then.
So you just rolled out of body or stood up out of body and just dove into the center of the earth. Is that how you do it?
I rocked out of body. I like Robert Peterson's method of sort of rocking side to
Uh-huh.
side, and then while on my side, I go down through my bed
Oh, through the
and
bed. Okay.
and then through underground and just keep going down. But then I sort of visualize myself already, like I sort of visualize like rocks and caves, kind of what an inner Earth would look like. And
Uh-huh.
then, yeah, so
And then you
the,
end up, now the first time you ended up with the prism, and now when you go down, I don't know how many more times you've done that. Are you there with your glasses on?
the glasses are off because I took them off. So it's like uh, me and my maybe not higher self, but my true self, my sovereign self, we're synchronized. We're not in the
Okay.
same time. What's the word? Wayne, help me out here. We're not in the
I'm
same time. Like we're
my
synchronized.
mind.
So like I removes my goggles there, it just so happens to also be the time when I go out of body, if that makes sense,
And
because
then
that's literally what it is.
when you go to that place where your true self is, do you merge? Are you one with your true self? Or are you two self you, Lucy, and then your two self standing side by side?
Oh, so I just use those terms just so you guys can differentiate between what I'm talking about, me and her, but I am her. That's it's you literally taking off your VR
Okay.
headset and becoming you again and not being interfaced with this hominid.
Okay. And have you explored that place at all or gone out from that place?
Yes, I was there just for that first preliminary round. afterwards, that's when I went further and discovered the Omniverse beings and
Oh,
all that. So I've gone beyond, yes.
okay. That's where you go. That's when you left there and how did you come upon the omniverse beings? Like, did you use intention or did they come to you?
No, I wanted to know because I got out of this construct and I was like, okay, but is there anything else outside of this, wherever I'm at?
Yes, yeah.
And, I just kept going like out and out and out and beyond. And then but it wasn't even like that. It was almost as if I sort of, the best word that I can describe it is emerged. I just emerged out. And then that's when I saw this this torus field and many torus fields, and I'm like, those are universes.
Mhm.
Those are universes. And it's interesting because when I got back, I did more digging. Because like I said, I see these things in the out of body, and then I go and see if there's any, you know, corroborating things for this and or evidence for this, some sort of substantiating evidence. And science is now talking about something known as the great attractor and the dipole repeller. That this idea that the universe is this sort of torus field shape, this sort of like a magnet, how there's poles, one going in and the other going out. So I think there's definitely something there. What I'm seeing, I think, is what it is.
So I'm gonna ask you kind of a hard question. We didn't plan on this, but I'm curious because you probably are aware of Isabella's work where she goes to the quantum field and she says that is outside of the deceptive matrix and it is not in, dimensions 3 through whatever, 6 or 7 or something like that, that it's outside of it. It's not the void that she said near-death experiencers sometimes go to, a false void, a copy void. How is your going down to the center of the earth experience outside of the matrix? How can you know that that's it? Just like Isabella says, no, this is it. Or
Well, yeah, and actually, I was just looking this up because I thought it was the case. But like our heart produces this electromagnetic field around it, and it's a shape
Yes.
of a torus. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why not just go in through the center of the heart? Or if you're talking about like based on massive centers of gravity, well, the one at the center of the sun's even more massive than the one on the Earth, and of course, the center of the solar system is even more. And then that there's what do they call them, the clusters, and then the center of the universe. And so I mean. Well, I guess through your OBEs, you actually went through the center and just instantaneously teleport out to the omniverse just through the Earth. But I mean, could you
Mhm.
do the same thing by like just going through your heart, or is that not enough of a mass center, I guess?
Yeah, so great question. Why trust the singularity portals?
Right.
Again, again, don't trust, test. You won't get to the galactic center because no one's allowed outside of this AI construct. You don't want to go to the sun because that's the demiurge or source, or how you call Wayne the source, and he wants
Yeah.
to merge with you, and he's not a real sun. The earth, Gaia, was again based off that original blueprint from Sophia. The heart of the earth is the most real thing in this entire false construct. So why not go through the center of your own heart? So again, the cardiac muscle belongs to the animus. It belongs to the mammalian hominid. This body isn't you. You are interfaced with this body, and we are programmed to identify with it, but it's not who we truly are. And our human names aren't our true names. Our original names was our original sound, our harmonic chord. Yes, we should try our best to live in accordance to natural law and work with our hominid form while we're interfaced with it. But ultimately, even your physical heart can't get you out because it's part of the construct too. It serves the needs of the animus. You don't control your heart. The autonomic nervous system does. You have no say over your heart beating or not because it's not yours. It's the program's. But your spirit, your sovereign spirit, your energy wave is yours, and it can take you back to your sublime soul.
Do you feel like, I mean, like I know William Buellman, the out of body expert, he uses a affirmation like move inward. I mean, that's very common within. And so if you use that intention to just move inward, move inward, move inward, move inward, do you think you would eventually get down, you would get to the center of the earth, or would that not work?
Yeah, that's actually what I say. That's actually I say just move inward, move inward. But I guess
Okay.
I'm not focusing on my like physical heart. I guess I'm
Mhm.
assuming or intending to just move inward to the center of gravity, the central 0 point of the singularity portal
So that
to
would,
move to that. Yeah, the true point, the monad,
it's
the
interesting the word heart and earth are anagrams of each other too. I'm
yes,
sure.
yes, yes, yes.
She's saying she's using monad 0 point. It reminds me when you say what about 0D? You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
use
I
that.
tend to think like oh, we're talking about these 12, 13 dimensions, and the further up you go in the dimensions, there's still traps, I kind of think of like 0D, like 0D would be like almost the 0 point. Like there's
That's right.
no vibration,
Yes,
there's no frequency, it's complete stillness. There's no, it's come almost like the true void in a sense, because there's no,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Zero is so the zero dimension can also get you back to the omniverse, both the 0 and 13. So yes, obviously from our perspective in the third D, it'll be easier to go to the zero. But the zero, if you think of like a straight line, if you think of a wave of infinite frequency, the waves like a sine wave, if it's so if it's such a high frequency, it almost merges and then it forms a straight solid line. So infinite frequency is almost the same as zero frequency. Zero and infinity are one. I say that carefully because I know that mathematicians are gonna come at me now, but zero and
Probably ties
infinity.
in with all the quote unquote imaginary numbers too, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Were you the one that
Sh
mentioned something about there being a sun behind the sun? Or was that someone else? I can't remember.
I came to that conclusion as well. And again, this is one of those things where I did see a picture of the demiurge and the idea about the sun behind the sun. I had read about it before. So, but I did see it out of body. But again, it's one of those things where it could be like we've discussed. It could be because I've seen it, but then again, other people have seen it, and that is what I saw. That there is the sun that we see is basically a sun disk, and behind that is Amun Ra, the true sun, which is a hidden sun, but he's the demiurge.
Mhm.
mm.
So one of your questions was, should we merge back with the sun? No,
No,
because
of course
yeah.
not.
So
Um, so can we maybe just ask these two, since we're on this question of how do we permanently exit,
Hmm.
we were wondering about one's level of consciousness at death and how that relates to one's ability to escape, and
yeah,
maybe what you personally practice.
yeah. So that's a tricky one because obviously we're practicing these. Julie, you're practicing your lucid dreams, and we're
Mhm.
practicing the OBEs in these controlled environments.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like if you get into a car accident, are you going to have the same sort of level of you know intention and awareness? That's one of those things that I don't know. We That's something that we can't really test. from the NDE data, people who did get into a violent accident, they do appear to be aware when they meet the spirit guides. They do seem to, be able to have develop rapport and speak intelligently with these spirit guides, even though there's manipulation, of course. But there does seem to be awareness, but is that guaranteed? We don't know. So yeah, that's a good question. It's one of those things where you just have to practice, have a plan.
Hmm.
Yes, set an intention, but definitely have a game plan, you know, and hope that you, when it is time to pass away, it can be at at a ripe old age in the comfort of and presence of your family, and not in a horrific way. So
Do you, Lucy, practice something other than OBEs? Do you practice affirmations or meditation?
no, when I started and like looked up the new age, they were saying meditation. I tried that for a bit. I don't find meditation very helpful. Meditation is very good. It's clinically uh, proven to help reduce stress and anxiety and things like that. So if you are someone who suffers from stress and anxiety, it is recommended to practice things like meditation or yoga that does calm you down. But in terms of getting actual spiritual insights and um, you know, knowledge about the matrix, I haven't found that to be helpful.
Mm, okay.
About the affirmations, you find that
Oh,
you at least preparing your
um,
mind for like that this is like an illusion, a dream, and that there's I'm just it's kind of me, it's like preparing for death, like mentally, and just constantly reaffirming it to myself. Like just but people do OBEs, they do the reality checks and stuff like that. Am I asleep? Am I awake? And that seems to help them achieve lucid dreaming or OBE. So do you feel like affirmations would help, or not that you would necessarily do them yourself? You probably do some form of all that.
well, I plan what I want to do and where I want to go for my OBEs, but in terms of, waking up every morning and saying, I'm going to have a good day or something like that, um, I don't really practice that. But in terms of your question specifically, Wayne, in terms of, repeating affirmations specifically to get out of here,
Yeah.
honestly, we are light years ahead of most people who have no idea. So, so honestly, what you guys are doing is more than enough. It is, it is adequate to say the least.
I have a
It,
follow-up question on
yes.
that. And there was this researcher, Pim Van Lommel, who in his book Consciousness Beyond Life, he quoted this one scientific study where there was a doctor who had done experiments on, like, he was a heart surgeon, I think, and these people's hearts had stopped, and he did a study on him, and like I think only 18% of them had an NDE, so like 82% of them did not remember anything. Not that you can really draw any solid conclusions on that, but it just kind of makes you wonder, like, why did 18% of them have an NDE and remember all that consciousness experiment? It kind of makes me think of like, the NPCs, like where people are saying, oh, well, not everybody has a spirit or soul. And like I know NDEers will say that they have like a hyper consciousness during their NDE, which is way more aware of being, normal everyday waking state. But do you have any done on like that study, like what that could, what can you infer from that?
I think,
It
but
just
I'm
makes me
not
worried
sure.
that I won't have the level of consciousness I need, like if I guys, because I don't have that many lucid dreams. So I finally hardly ever find myself waking up in the middle of my dreams. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, yeah, lucid dreams are very difficult for me too. Julie is pretty lucky that she gets to recognize. I essentially, what I do is I essentially try to think of this experience as a lucid dream, and because I'm aware that I'm in a matrix, I kind of think of that as sort of being
Yeah.
lucid in
Mhm.
this reality.
Right.
Like, me acknowledging on this level that I'm in a dream. This is the Maya or the samsara or the illusion that the ancients were talking about. So it's like I sort of pretend that this itself is the dream, and me
Right.
reminding myself of that. Which, well, yeah, I guess that then that would be the affirmations that you were talking about. Just me reminding
Mhm.
myself
Yeah.
that I am in a construct, and that. So yeah, and then as regards to the the study of the 18%, again, that number has bumped up from decades ago. So more and more people are starting to experience the NDEs, and the ones who are not, when we look at the NDE reports, a lot of them, some of them have said that at first they didn't remember, but later on, like weeks or
Yeah.
months later, they started remembering. So at
Yeah.
first, yes, a lot of people don't remember, but then later on, then they're like, wait a minute, I think I met a spirit guide and all that kind of stuff. And then they tell their story. I've
Mhm.
definitely come across NDEs where they specifically stated that they did not remember at first their NDE. And that happens to me too, where sometimes I would have an OBE,
Yeah.
and when I wake up at first in the very start of the morning, I wouldn't remember. But then as I'm going throughout my day, I suddenly remember, like, oh, I had this OBE. Let me
Right.
write that down. So sometimes that does
Yeah.
happen when at first you
Yeah.
completely totally forget. And Julie, it sounds like you've experienced that too.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
um, but yes, it's one of those things where, um, you know, I know that, like we said, how much of this can we be 100% sure of? Unfortunately, we can't. Like we said, in science, there's always that bit of percent error. So all we can do is try our best. Again, we are light years ahead of where most people are, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah. I think we are at a good place to end this discussion. I mean, obviously we could keep going on for hours, but we are going to have to end it. This has been really awesome, Lucy. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I enjoyed it too.
Well, yeah, like thanks for being here with us and sharing. And we'll put your links in the video description. And thanks to everyone for watching. I'm Wayne Bush, and
Julie McVeigh with Sovereign Spirits. If you enjoyed this discussion, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, please subscribe and click on the bell icon so you will be alerted to future videos. Of course, please share the video. And we hope you're having a fantastic day or evening wherever you may be. Bye, everyone.
bye.
Bye.